Hi, I'm Jeff Farnwell, Director of the MBA program at Rockford College. About 18 months ago, the Rockford Chamber of Commerce set out to make networking easier in Rockford by identifying area people you should know in business. Currently, 41 people have been recognized and celebrated as one of these people. This series of talks held at Rockford College was designed to provide a vehicle for the public to hear from and learn about each of the people you should know. I hope you enjoy this talk.
And welcome to Rockford College for our People You Should Know talks. Today I'm excited to introduce Mr. Bill LaFever, President and owner of the Doran Company and a 2012 People You Should Know Award recipient. The Doran Company has been in the wholesale floral distributing industry since 1945. Under Mr. LaFever's leadership, the company has grown to 17 distribution facilities and nearly tripled in sales. Mr. LaFever was the youngest board president of the Wholesale Florist and Florist Supplier Association, is an executive board member for the Chicago Festival Association, and is an initial member of the Next Rockford Group. His talk today is titled, The Flower Business, How It's Grown. Please help me welcome Mr. Bill LaFever.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks to Rockford College and to Rockford Chamber for putting these talks together, and for obviously the entire People You Should Know project. As she mentioned, I was going to talk a little bit about the flower industry, but did I just do? All right. Well, sorry. Guess we should have rehearsed that one more time. So we have 20 minutes, and so since the series of the talks is entitled "People You Should Know," I thought I'd spend a couple minutes just giving a little bit more background about myself, although it was a nice introduction, and then also spend a little bit of time talking about the Doran Company and what we do, and then maybe go into some specific aspects about the floral industry that you might find interesting. It's a little more difficult for somebody that's in the industry to try to figure out what would be interesting outside, so hopefully you'll be able to steer me in the direction or slow me down on topics that maybe are more of interest versus the other ones that get a little mundane for those of us that are knee-deep in it. So we'll try to stay on schedule on that to make sure everyone fits there, but what I want to make sure doesn't occur is the death by PowerPoint. If all we do is hear my voice for the next 19 minutes, now that we're probably on to, not only will you guys be bored looking like this, I'll feel like this. So I'd rather have this be much more interactive. Ask questions. If you have a comment, a good idea, if you want me to expound on a topic, anything along those lines, please just let me know, because it's really about trying to share the information, but I'm not necessarily sure what you guys might want to hear. So let's make sure we have no death by PowerPoint. And I promise there's not even enough slides to cause quite this reaction. So a little bit about myself. I'm the grandson of the founder of the company, and so I'm either cursed or blessed depending upon the day that my mother gave me her maiden name as my middle name. So leading up to Mother's Day was a little bit more of a curse for the last couple of weeks. Now that we're after Mother's Day, much more of a blessing and the like. We're local, went to high school here at McChesney Park up at Harlem, then graduated from Notre Dame. After that, worked outside the floral industry. I lived in downtown Chicago, worked for Arthur Andersen in their audit division in a computer risk management and business systems consulting role. And I did that for about 3 years. And I never had planned on joining the family business, so I give credit, and once again credit or blame, to my mom for what I call one of her best sales jobs, convincing me to leave downtown Chicago in a separate career and move to Rockford into the family business. And I never really planned on joining it, probably partially because growing up I worked in it with such glamorous titles as bucket washer and cooler cleaner and floor sweeper, things like that. So I didn't really have the passion or the love of the industry that maybe I was able to develop after I came back. So I do give my mom credit for convincing me to come join. So she either used that little mother's intuition or mother's guilt or something initially, but I thank her for it now at this point at least. And then a little more on a personal level, I've developed AOGA. Anyone know what AOGA is? Jeff, you know AOGA? No? Adult onset golf addiction. it's probably the worst thing that can happen to you because you take up golf when you're already an adult, and you become very passionate about it. Um, there's not many people worse than me at golf, but not many love it more than I love it. So it's definitely an addiction there. So. Who the Bill Doran Company is, I know Lauren gave a nice introduction there. Founded in Rockford in 1945. The initial building was on South Main Street, just down by the railroad tracks. My grandfather started in a portion of a beer distributor's cooler, and it was him and one delivery vehicle, and that's how the company started. Now we are over 450 people, operating in 17 branch locations. We've got 6 in Illinois, 3 in Wisconsin, 2 in Iowa, 2 in Texas, 1 in Nebraska, 1 in Ohio, 1 in Kentucky, and then recently we put 1 in Albany, New York. So we're kind of geographically spread out there, but it was more based upon opportunities and where we had where our strengths would fit into the marketplace. We do deliver out of these 7 locations flowers into 20 different states. Those flowers are grown in over 18 different countries. So we end up being as much about a logistics company as almost anything at times. We're following the seasons around, so when it's winter here, we're buying flowers from Australia, New Zealand. Although the majority of our flowers do come from Central America and South America, but to get the full bevy of flowers that is desired by our customer base, it does take us going into at least 18 countries. Some years we hit 20 countries. And I did put up our mission here because I'll go. Bill Doran Company invests in our customer success by providing exemplary service and knowledge of the floral industry while focusing on improving the quality, cost, and timeliness of the products our customers depend on to achieve their success. It's one long run-on sentence, so I'm sure if there's any English majors in here, they would probably be correcting this somehow. But it was developed by a group of managers that we had at the time. I think maybe we had 8 or 9 locations, and we spent parts of a couple different manager meetings putting this together. And I think that the important thing that I wanted to bring out of here is that any project that we do, any acquisition, any change in business structure, we always go back to this and say, does it improve either the quality of the product that we're delivering to our customers? Does it improve the cost structure? Are we able to put an advantage there for our customers because we're the ultimate middleman? Or does it improve the timeliness? Because from the time we cut those flowers in Peru or Colombia or wherever it happens to be, it's kind of a death march. They're dying. I mean, there's nothing we can do there except watch them die. So we really, any project that we take on has to address one of those 3 things. And it's amazing how many projects we think about doing until we come back to this statement and go, oh, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with what we're trying to ultimately accomplish. So it's nice for us to have our mission statement there that is the one long run-on sentence. So coming into this, I had it was wide open. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I thought, well, the most important thing probably for me to talk about would be the floral industry. So I started coming up with a random list of ideas. So I was going to just throw them up here on the potential topics that were out there, and then if there are any and even that pull at you guys, I'd be happy to expound on them. Otherwise, we can kind of move on a little bit. But one of them I could talk about care and handling tips for the end consumer. Flowers typically don't last as long as they could or should on your kitchen table or on your desk, and a lot of it's just simple little things that can help that. The difference of flowers versus other perishables, we don't sell fruits and vegetables, and the people that distribute fruits and vegetables don't sell flowers, and there's a lot of characteristics there, and we can spend time there. The trip of the average flower from farm to florist, whether we chose Colombia or Peru, just talking about everything that has to happen there. The impact of the internet on our industry, on the floral industry. I know it's impacted every industry. It's a little unique in how it's affected the floral industry. So we have these third-party internet order gatherers that have affected us quite a bit. The transfer of family business into the 3rd generation. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and there were uncles and the like, and so there's a story there that, and all of these stories would probably take well longer than 20 minutes. But the branding of a commodity. Flowers do not have, there's no standardization on we have no governing body that says this flower is a select or a fancy. There's no one that, because it's not consumed internally by a person, there's just there's no standardizations. So flowers become a massive commodity, and it's really built on a relationship. And what we were able to do is develop a brand within a commodity by working with partnering with certain farms, allowing them to grow certain flowers for us and putting them into our brand. It was a 10-year project, and that's where this Doran Direct label comes in, and so we could spend time just talking about trying to convert a commodity into a brand. Changes in flower growing. Since 1945, when the company started, all the flowers were grown in about a 60-mile radius of Rockford, and they weren't even purchased. They were on consignment till they were sold. Now we're purchasing all of our flowers from 1,000 miles away, and we're purchasing them even before they're cut. We're buying the stems and advancing money down, all without contracts, and that kind of goes back to some of the commodity side of it. All of our industry is done without contracts. It's all done on handshakes. So it's a little unique there in how things work. You're dealing in third world countries with, hundreds of farms, and it's all done with the shake of a hand. Another good topic is the social impact on third world countries. We employ, the industry employs thousands and thousands of rural workers in third world countries. And they're able to have jobs in countries such as Colombia, where they might have been working on drug plantations or the like. We're able to pull them in. The other part of it is our industry is about, at the farm level, it's about 80% women that we employ. So these are women that typically, without the floral industry in some of these third world countries such as Kenya and Peru and Colombia, they would be unemployed. So we're able to do that. And then also what we do for child care at the farm level, the doctor services we provide, so we could spend some time there. We could talk about how our companies position ourselves, especially in the last 10 years, through branding and through some of the other things, to hopefully be around for another 68 years or so. And then I do have a video of a rose farm in Colombia, and it's about a 14-minute total video, which obviously would put us well over the time, but there's a 4-minute segment and another 4-minute segment after that might be of some interest to you if you like. So I said I wanted this to be interactive. Was that a question? Well, please.
Yeah, I would like to hear about how e-commerce has changed your business.
Sure. And it's probably changed on a couple different levels, but one of the things that's negatively affected the industry the most is now that there are companies out there on the internet that gather the orders that whether they're in an office building in New York City or in India or wherever, they're gathering the orders and then still sending them through the wire services such as FGD, Floral, 1-800. So all they do is they're not even part of our industry, but they'll build these elaborate websites and make it seem like they're even a local florist. So if you're sitting here in Rockford and you wanted to send flowers to your mother in Amarillo, Texas, if you log in on the internet, type in flowers Amarillo, and all these different websites pop up. Unfortunately, the high percentage of those ones that first pop up are not even florists and potentially not even in the United States. But they'll take your credit card information, they'll take the order, and then call another florist or put it through the wire services and place that order on your behalf and take anywhere from 10 to 20% off the top. And because you're most likely not going to see the flowers, you don't know that the value wasn't there for the dollars. It's really undermined the industry dramatically from that perspective, because it's just siphoned off a tremendous amount of money. And so I was in Washington D.C. in early April, trying to lobby for how to get things changed like this. So for deceptive advertising, it used to happen in the yellow pages years ago, but now that's an industry that's been affected by the internet even more, right? But we used to have to try to lobby to keep the people out of the local yellow pages. But so that's one of the impacts the internet's had. Now there are one of the negative impacts. There are the good side of it as well. It makes it much easier to see the product, to be able to place an order in faraway distances. So that was probably primarily one of the biggest points I was going to bring up on there. Please.
So I'd like to hear more about the trip of the flower. I mean, because you literally said you're buying a flower before it's even bloomed, or so you've got to, at the time you think it gets to someone, I would imagine 24 hours, 48 hours or less.
Yeah, we hope it's that quick, but yeah, no, certainly, and I've got it's actually on the next slide, so it's perfect. Bright idea for you there. So what we do, and I'll just 10 seconds on this, and then I'll kind of go into the purchasing side of it, which is what was next on this, because I wasn't sure if people were really going to ask questions or not, so I needed to be prepared. Right? So my bright idea was going to be, in case nobody said anything, was going to be to talk about this. So we sell basically anything that you might see at a traditional retail flower shop. the vases, the silk flowers, the ribbons, the foams, the tapes, anything that you would see at a traditional retail flower shop, we stock in these 17 locations and have available. We sell to people who resell product. Event planners, mass markets, grocery stores, traditional retail floors. The majority of what we sell, except for some bouquets that go right into the mass market, is unfinished product. It's the retailers that are the creative people. We're not the creative people at all. Our stuff's still in protective wrappers, and we're more on the logistics side of things. But more onto your question of the trip. So when we go to purchase flowers, we do it from the 17 to 20 different countries. On a monthly basis, we'll buy from over 100 different farms. Because just the magnitude, the size of the farms, and the sheer depth and width of what we need for our customer base. And I'm leading into your question. I apologize. Did anyone send a Valentine's arrangement or buy a Valentine's arrangement for somebody? Sure. Okay. And what did you order? Roses. And any particular type of roses? Long stem red roses.
That's true.
So he says he ordered long stem red roses. What's interesting is that we don't sell red roses. There are 6 popular varieties of red roses that we sell, but we don't get to be at the generic level. So from farm to florist, we get very detailed in what we sell. So there are 6 different varieties of red. Right now, I ran a couple of reports. There are 30 popular varieties of pink roses that we're selling on a weekly basis. 30 different shades of pink every single week right now that we're selling. But when you guys call the order, maybe you order a light pink, a dark pink, I don't know. But 6 red, 30 pink, a dozen yellow. There are, since the January 1st of this year, we've sold over 300 different rose varieties. And then you factor in, you said you ordered long stem. We have 5 popular stem lengths that we sell, but there are 9 stem lengths that can be ordered. So when you take 9 stem lengths times, the 300 varieties that we sold, it ends up with a tremendous amount of potential variances there, or nuances there. And then roses is just one category. We have about 150 categories like roses that then expand out, all that die as soon as you cut them from the ground. So more back to your question there, and that was the video actually is probably, but I'll go through the distance first, and then the video will probably show a lot more. But we'll cut a flower, and if we say a rose in South America, we cut it, and it needs to get hydrated. These roses are pretty not the most highly intelligent organism. They think they're going to be attached to the ground and there's going to be a water supply forever. So they're not prepared for a trip of that magnitude. Because even if we were going cross country or flying down there, we're going to pack a little extra water bottle and everything else. So we like to get them hydrated. We lower the pH and try to get the water uptake, fill that stem as much as possible with water and nutrients. And that literally takes probably about, and then we want to get the temperature down. So you're probably looking at 18 to 24 hours, just that we want it still at the farm. And if we don't do that process, we lose the value of the longevity of that stem. Then we'll fly that flower into Miami. 89% of all flowers grown outside the U.S. Clear customs in Miami, Florida, and it's almost 100% based upon backhaul. They have more merchandise going south, about down into South America, than anywhere else in the U.S. So the freight inbound ends up being quite a bit cheaper, Bogota to Miami. So the economies of scale just completely shift there. But the product will come into Miami, and at that point, it's got to pass agriculture inspection and pass customs. Every box that we bring in goes through an X-ray machine that is simultaneously, or potentially can be simultaneously viewed by a supervisor in Miami as well as in Washington, D.C. And that was obviously to stop the inflow of drugs. So they say now it's the floral industry from a distribution standpoint is pretty much drug-free because of the steps they've taken there. But unfortunately, that didn't really affect the drugs onto the street. The people that do that have no trouble distributing them, it doesn't seem like. So they make it through there. We then we put them in our refrigerators in Miami to cool them down again, because the best thing for a flower is to keep it as cold as possible. It keeps it in hibernation. kind of like a bear in the wintertime. Then we'll put it on a refrigerated truck with teams of drivers, and because we don't have time to have that truck pull over at all. And then we'll go straight to one of our 17 facilities. And at that point, then we're 24 hours from Miami to Rockford in a truck, basically. And then we break the flowers down and redistribute them to the local florist. Kind of gives the.
Now, so you don't have one central place, you need send them to each of your 17 places.
Unfortunately, yeah, we don't have time.
Yeah.
We'd love to be able to, bring them into one large facility and hub and spoke it all the way out across the Midwest, but just that extra, even those extra 24 hours. What makes it even more challenging is probably it's well less than 20% of what we sell has been ordered from us before we have to buy it from the farm. It's probably right around 15% these days is pre-ordered from us. Other than that, the other 85% of what we're buying is on speculation. We're hoping somebody buys it. So we're buying it when it's still on the plant. They cut it. We still own it, and we'll start to sell at that point. So we have a moving inventory then. We have an inventory prior to moving when it's still on the plant, and so our different locations will start requesting parts of it. So we have a buying office in Miami that we have a staff of people, and then we have buyers in Ecuador, in Quito, Ecuador, and in Bogota, Colombia. So they're also helping with the procurement side of things and helping us keep this inventory moving. So when we allocate those initial roses or any type of flower, we don't know if they're going to end up in San Antonio, Texas, or Green Bay, Wisconsin, or Albany, New York. And then any extras also tend to just get pushed through.
What's your loss rate?
The loss rate is probably as a percent of sales. Is probably the easiest way to look at it. We like to keep it under 5%, but yeah, it's often it'll often go a little bit higher, and that's truly what gets put into the dumpster or destroyed. You also have distressed sales. We will advertise to our own customers, to our customer base, the age of our product. We can special these out in case you can use them for something internally, or if they, a lot of times funeral work, the product needs to be more opened. If you're delivering an arrangement to somebody's home, our customer wants it maybe a little bit tighter so it lasts longer and the recipient can see the flowers bloom and they can enjoy it that way. But for funeral work, there's not, fortunately, I guess there's not a lot of lead time. So you need more open flowers, and so then we'll sell those ones there. So distress sales are also affect, obviously, margins and profitability quite a bit.
Bill, you've got a lot of moving parts. How does the firm keep track of this stuff before computers?
Well, before computers, it was a little bit different too, because the product was all much closer. I mean, I guess there was probably a gap in there as we started to buy from further away. But before I'm going back into the early 70s, mid 70s, even late 70s, the product was still all pretty much grown, in at that point maybe 150 mile radius. There were carnations being grown in Denver that were put on a train, and at that point the demand pretty much was outweighing supply, or was pretty equal. So you would just take whatever they would send you then. At holidays, there was never enough product. It was, you got to allocate out, as a wholesaler, you allocated out to your good customers extra product, or product based on that. Now at a holiday, there's 20% extra flowers at all times, just because of with Kenya, and Kenya's come on real strong in the last 4 or 5 years with their flower production. So yeah, so prior to computers, it wasn't as much of a necessity, because everything eventually, things sold. And then the other side of that was you were on consignment. So if it didn't sell, it wasn't the end of the world. And then the growers kind of controlled how much they would give you if you weren't giving them a good return.
You mentioned earlier about the buyers you have Miami and Atlanta. Are those buyers you take contract with, or are they actually your employees?
There are actual employees.
Okay, so how far and wide are your employees spread?
Well, they're at those 17 locations, okay. And then we have a facility in Miami that we don't do any sales out of, so that's why it kind of wasn't in those other numbers. And then we just have 2 employees outside the U.S. One in Quito and one in Bogota.
And how many total employees?
About 450. And if you ask our HR girl, she'll say, if five come in and five go out about every week or so. So it's a little bit of a nightmare there for her. But
Different question for you. Okay, now you service this market, right?
mhm,
Do you have competition in this market?
sure.
Okay,
Yep.
so what's an example of the kind of competition you have? Is it stuff that you can't provide or choose not to provide, or is it just, because it would seem to me, yeah, I guess it would seem to me that I would be thinking that a distributor would probably own a regional market pretty well.
Oh, I wish.
Really? Okay. All right.
Well, first off, there's a retail florist in town here could get service deliveries 5 days a week from 6 or 7 different distributors. So they have, there are plenty of options from that perspective. They're coming out of Chicago, out of Milwaukee, out of Madison, out of the Quad Cities, and into Rockford, for example. So, and some come 3 days a week, some come 5 days a week. So, and then there's also internet buying. There are Miami-based companies where products cleared that will ship, directly out to a florist here in Rockford as well, and either use like FedEx or just fly it to. They wouldn't have the. Most retailers wouldn't have the scale to receive a semi of flowers, so they'll have to maybe have them flown into Chicago, O'Hare, and then drive in and pick them up at that point or something like that. So, unfortunately there's no. There's plenty of competition. How do we stay competitive? Hopefully it's by listening to our customers and seeing what they need and want. Going back to the mission statement, if we can deliver a flower that lasts longer, that's a little more unique, by having our buyers where they're at, we are able to sometimes source product that other people aren't. Like just recently now we're bringing in peonies from Alaska because they get 20 hours of daylight. So there's these Alaskan peonies in the last 18 months. But if you're not on top of that and you don't have people out there just trying to source products, so now we've partnered with 3 different growers, and I wouldn't even call them growers. I think they just they put them in the ground, and we're teaching them how to cut them, how to pack them, and get them on a flight to O'Hare, and that gives it enhances the peony production for us, because otherwise they'd be done pretty soon. But now we'll get July and August typically. First year is kind of a disaster with that, but hopefully we'll get better at it. So and it's a lot of relationships, just like it is going backwards. Since there are no standardizations on flowers, a good rose grower is dramatically different than an average rose grower. And then the poor rose growers just kind of rotate in and out of business all the time. But even a solid average farm, the excellent farm is dramatically different. And that's where the branding kind of comes in to say, you can't just call it a 60 centimeter Freedom, which is a popular red rose right now. You can't just sell those, because if that's all you're selling, the guy that puts the effort in and grows a head size on a rose this tall compared to something maybe half that size. So that's where we try to brand and try to differentiate, and hopefully develop a little bit of price difference for the on behalf of the farm, to be honest.
How do you get flower shops? I'm guessing it's a huge relationship there.
So how do we get them as a customer? Yeah. I mean, that's we have I think there's about 80, 85, 88 inside sales staff, and then probably about another 10 outside salespeople. So they're the other side of the industry is pretty small, so you learn about them pretty quick, and then those salespeople that's their job really to stay in touch with the local market. And interestingly enough, most of our customers probably buy from 2 or 3 suppliers, and split their business up. It's partially just to not have all your eggs in one basket when it's such a perishable product, and things do run out, and we run low, because it is all of the competition we have are speculating like we are. So our goal is always to try to make sure that we're get the highest percentage we can of that product or of their purchases, but it kind of varies from customer to customer. Not many people are opening. It's not like new flower shops pop up weekly or anything like that.
So what percent of your sales is Valentine's Day money?
Good question. Mother's Day is actually grown to be bigger than Valentine's Day, and it's actually a little bit easier of a holiday for us now because it's not all red roses. It's a bevy of flowers, and that's much easier to source. So Mother's Day in general, the percent of total, you get 12. It's probably 21, 22% of our annual sales. And when we say, that's 2 weeks, the 2 weeks leading into Mother's Day, the 2 weeks leading into Valentine's Day, it's probably over 20%. For Mother's Day, because I ran the numbers because I didn't know if people would ask. Even though roses aren't necessarily the most popular flower for Mother's Day, I think we sold a little over 3 million stems of roses for Mother's Day. I don't know if that's a big number or not, but it's all relative, right? I mean, 3 million compared to what? But it's a private label. So what we've done with Doran Direct is when we found a farm, and lots of farms typically grow more than one item, and it's because they'll rotate their crops and they'll do different things. But what they'll do is they might do one thing really well. Even specifically, we have one farm that grows red roses incredibly well, but their agronomists don't do really well with the colored roses. So at that farm, we allow them to wrap in our wrappers and put in our box lids Doran Direct, just their red varieties. And so then we market them as a different brand, or I'm sorry, as a different price point, and guarantee head size, guarantee freshness. It also allows us to know when they're cut. We have more control over the cut date on those. And every variety of, for example, on roses has a different cut stage. As that bloom starts to open up, I mentioned this Freedom, a very popular red rose. As soon as that bloom opens up about a centimeter on the aperture across the top, it gets cut, whether there's any demand for it or not. So it's getting cut at that point, and then being put through the pipeline. It's not like bananas where they're all cut green and then put in a sea container, and then they control the atmospheric conditions in there with the carbon dioxide and carbon to ripen them as they travel. For us, if we cut that rose too tight, there's nothing we can do to get it to open. If we cut it when it's just cracked, that Freedom won't do that. Every rose variety has a slightly different cut stage, and if we cut too open, then by the time it gets to our customer, they'll reject it because it'll already because it's kind of one of those, like, once it gets over the edge, then it just goes really too fast. So we've got an optimal cut stage on each variety of flower. Even Alstroemeria and things like that have all their own specific cut stage.
You mentioned that you don't have contracts with the farms. How have you managed to stay out of that?
Well, no one wants a contract really because you're still dealing with Mother Nature, and it would be hard to enforce, first of all, because you're dealing with small businesses. I mean, in some cases these farms are fairly small, and enforcing them would be almost impossible. So, I mean, even the Walmarts of the world don't have contracts with the farms there. It's done on a best case scenario. It's really relationships, and going back to it's our salespeople's relationships with the retail customers in the city, and then it's the relationships back to the farms. People like to do business with people they like, right? So you just make sure and you help them when they need help, and hopefully they help you when you're in the binds.
And most flowers are grown indoors now?
They're under plastic, and maybe it's only because the timing. Should we press play on that video real quick? Because it'll tie in a little bit to the Doran Direct, and I'll let you. Oh, you know what? Oh, I'm sorry. Can we? I was just gonna do one more. Can you do that slide right there? Yep. You guys can still see that? Okay. So this is a 747. Just to kind of give you a magnitude of our industry. At retail, we do about in the U.S. there's about a $35 billion industry. These are all boxes of flowers. These boxes are about 42 inches by 24 inches by about 10 inches. This is the cockpit. The pilots sit all the way up here, so you can kind of see the magnitude. There's about 20 flights that leave Bogota alone, let alone all the other countries we're buying from on a daily basis. We can have 115 tons of flowers can fit in one of these. We get about, this isn't Bill Doran, but this is the industry. There's about 40,000 boxes of flowers arrive into Miami each day. So that's the sheer volume of stems that are coming in.
Are you USDA regulated?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
And that we wish, in some regards, we wish we were. Product gets inspected by agriculture to make sure that there's no pests in there and that we're not bringing anything that could damage the environment. But no, it's wide open. That's what makes it tough, because then everyone just without those standards, it goes to commodity, and everyone just says price, price, price. And that's where we really tried to partner with a number of years ago. And all right, sorry. And this is a fairly large size farm for Columbia. This is our closest partnered farm. The gentleman that owns this, he and I spend a lot of time talking to each other, but rarely is it about flowers. It's kind of gotten to that level. So these are, when you say indoor, these are just plastic. They change the plastic about every 18 months to 2 years, depending on the quality of it. So these are the rows of plants. 1 hectare of roses has about 72,000 plants in it. Plants produce 0.7 stems per month to 1.5 stems per month, depending on the variety. So 1 hectare will produce 50,000 stems per month to 108,000 stems per month. This can translate into, this particular farm is producing about 1.1 million stems of roses per hectare, 36 times 36 hectares of roses. So they're doing 40 million roses a year out of this farm. So they're cutting them. These are corrugated boxes, but they're plastic. And so what we're doing is, as soon as they cut them in the field, they're being put in these boxes for protection purposes. And then here in a second, I think it will show. They're being put in a solution already, immediately starting to hydrate them. We're barcoding at this point. We know which bed it came out of, and then who was responsible for cutting it to make sure that the aperture. And so now we'll start tracking them in the field. We'll start tracking that rose to know the quality, and if there's any issues, we can trace it all the way back to that date, time, who cut it, and which bed it was in. So he's bringing the empty boxes back out. This is more of a video that we.
25 roses in a box? 50?
In these boxes, they're probably doing 25s. But at this point, we're not as concerned. It'll go through a couple steps of grading here shortly. This is where you wish you could just kind of fast forward a little bit for you. So we use a trolley system to run through, because you could see that was pretty expansive. So there are motorized like push carts on there too when they get like a full train of them, but they're just kind of showing one. Here they are being initially fumigated. They wear that clothing. It's not necessary. It is 100% safe for what they're doing at this point. But it's more protective. You can walk right on through there. Just trying to show that we allow the workers whatever level of safety that they choose. So we now are now we're going to start scanning everything. So we know what time it made these boxes from the time that they were packed till the time that they made it into the receiving area. So we're starting to scan them. These will go into our system to see where our inventory is already at, so that a manager in another city, in Austin, Texas, could start deciding where he wants to buy, how many stems he wants to have come into his facility. They're going into a different solution at this point in a cooler. This is about 35 degrees in here.
What does the solution do again, though?
In this case, what they're doing right now is it lowers the pH in the water level that's in there and provides a small amount of nutrients, but lowering the pH really allows the water to go up faster through those cells of the stem with a low pH. So the real key there for us is getting the pH down as low as, to a certain level low, and then we're trying to fill that stem with as much water as possible.
So it's similar to the Floral.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, and that's what that does. This is just a little bit different of a solution because we don't want to start giving it that much sugar yet, because that sugar allows it to finish. So here they're starting the grading process, and this is where this farm. Let me see what it's. I want to make sure I don't misquote. There's 600 employees at this particular farm. And in this case, 80% are women. If we make it to the end of the video, which I'm almost positive we won't, so they're looking in a mirror there to be able to to check the packing of them. Now they're putting them into stems, or into bunches of 25 stems and wrapping them up. But for this farm has a daycare center for children under 4 years old. They're able to bring them in free. Doctors are there 2 days a week for health care, free. They're provided breakfast and lunch as part of their wage. And this is probably about an hour and a half drive outside the city of Bogota. So you're out kind of in the rural area.
The barcode that you're using, is that your proprietary software or is that just something?
No, it's just a regular barcode. So it's our. We went through the UPC and we have our own UPC code. So it's Bill Doran Company's particular number, so that we can trace it. So, if in the end this bouquet ends up at Jewel, and there's a problem, they can come back to us. It's accountability and traceability. But in this case, those weren't bouquets, so it's more tracking for internal purposes. Wish they worked that fast all the time, then we'd really be. Yeah, well, and they're taking a flight too, So if you really think about it, they're doing all of this processing. Now we still have to put them in a truck, at this farm, deliver them to an airport. They get put on with a freight forwarder, and since 9/11/01, we have to have that. Now that freight has to be perfect. We can't be missing one box. If we're missing one box, that plane doesn't get to take off. So now you're paying more people to double check and triple check, putting those pallets of flowers together. To get put on the plane. Then when they land, you got to pay. You're paying customs people and you're paying agriculture people. Government doesn't do that for free, so you're paying them, and so there's a lot of. By the time I sell a flower, my cost when I have a flower sitting here in Rockford, only about half of my cost goes to the farm. The other half goes to logistics companies and government.
What's the average
cost or.
So one flower stores, how much on average?
Well, once again, it goes back. We can sell. You can sell a red rose for 50 cents, and you can sell a red rose for $2.50. And that's just non-holiday specific. So it really varies on stem length, variety. So and you were asking about like per stem pricing, like what we sell for. Yeah, it really varies. The other side of it is if a customer gives us an order pre-order, so it's one of that 15%, we'll give a dramatic discount as well. And I guess what so our pricing rises the longer we've owned it, and then all of a sudden it dives down. So you give me the order 2 weeks out, it's this price, and then if you're buying it before it arrives in Miami, if you're buying it on the truck from Miami to Rockford, if you're buying if you're buying a box of them in Rockford, or you're buying a single bunch in Rockford. And then after it hits a certain age, then that price starts plummeting down. So it's really a moving, our price lists are very dynamic. Was there anything on that video that actually I think that hit this is a good point. I think it's the 8-minute mark. So, and so the technology is all very good. It's all, they have their own satellite uplinks at that point to transfer. So.
Somewhere in the process, though, they started putting Doran labeling on it. Is that still in Bogota? Or
Yep. That was still at the farm. It hasn't even.
Okay.
Oh. So this was my 3 children. I guess since you're the presenter, you can always bring up your kids, right?
Yeah.
So those roses are probably about 6 feet tall. So that was in 2008, and then that was just earlier this year. So they started growing up fast. So then that was another. These were at the clock tower. We on an annual basis we do quite a show for our customers. We bus customers in from Iowa and Wisconsin and Southern Illinois, bring in designers from throughout the world. We had I think we had 6 countries represented in the ballroom. So we take the entire clock tower ballroom and fill it with flowers, and then do classroom presentation, breakout sessions, and things like that for them.
So what keeps you awake at night? Related to the business, what is the thing that keeps
There's that old joke, I sleep like a baby, right?
Okay.
You wake up every 15 minutes crying and screaming. So then I sleep like a baby, just like that. It is as much as we talked about the flowers, it's still a people business. You know, it's each one of my 17 locations, I have a very great manager, and they make it happen there. They're the king of that castle, and they've got a staff of salespeople, and then, you know, going back to the farm. So, you know, to me, it's just making sure everyone stays happy. You know, it's all about those the farms that we're dealing with, and the salespeople at their level, and it's just really keeping the communication open and sharing information. For a long time, our industry was just so it was very antagonistic. It was, no, I'm not buying from you unless you're a penny cheaper, and you know, and things like that. I mean, that's kind of what I came into, was just this, you know, a kind of obnoxious industry from that perspective. You know, there was no loyalty, and you truly would try to throw your weight around by, you know, not buying from that guy for a week because he did something, or, you know, because he wouldn't lower his price, or you heard he sold to your competition cheaper, and it was just this, and that's what our company even was doing, because that was what it was. And what we tried to flip there was say, you know, it doesn't have to be like this. We can use our energy in much better efforts, and then that's where we brought in our branding. If you will do these things for us, we'll do, you know, we'll give consistent purchasing. We will do some of these other things for you.
Just a comment on the internet sales. This is before I joined the chamber when I started doing this, but I learned that whenever I did some internet sales or purchasing to send to somebody in some other state, I was always disappointed either in the price or the quality or both. And I got in the habit, I think I got with my sister, of calling locally.
And I should have mentioned that when she asked that. That's, yeah, find a local florist and just call them. Give them your credit card over the phone. They will take care of you times. And
Got high quality every time I've done that, and it's just
really the best way to do it. There is no doubt. And the other thing is, unless it's for a specific function, if you just say, send what you have that's beautiful. You know, 'cause sometimes people say, what's the best way to send flowers? Call a local florist and tell them, you know, your price point that you want to be at, and let them look in their cooler and see what's beautiful. These are very creative people. They're in there. They're typically not in the retail floral business for the money. They're in it because they're passionate about it and they enjoy it. And when you give them that range, all of a sudden they just the arrangement that they'll make for you versus, I want 6 stems of orange, this, and 3 stems of this, and 2 stems of that, you know, then, but you're 100% right. That really.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I this past weekend my daughter and I were shooting outside, and I walked into a flower shop, and the first time I said, "What do you want to spend? What colors do you want?" And she said this and this, and it came out and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first time I ever bought flowers. So they were just like, instead of what do you want, they were just saying, what do you want to pay, and that was something
Yeah.
awesome to do. And it was really neat.
Yep. And when you give them that flexibility, I think that most customers will really treat you well on that scenario.
So what's the hottest trend going on right now from the consumer standpoint?
Peonies are huge, and that's why we've been doing the expansion up in Alaska to bring those in a little more to expand the season. Hydrangeas have been big for still a number of years, even, which is odd to me because we can all have hydrangea bushes in our yards, but the brides still want those. The color orange, it's been big for probably 9 months, and it's projected just to get bigger. And it's all the different shades of orange. Obviously, we see that in, you know, sometimes a little more progressive markets, and then we sense it come into this area a little bit later. But orange is going to stay strong. Orange for weddings, orange for everything right now, and the problem with there's not enough orange roses in the ground, and it takes everyone's a little hesitant to put them in the ground because that first cutting will take probably it's probably about 160 days, 180 days before you get. So you purchase that, and when you make a purchase on a rose plant to put in the ground, you really need to leave it there for about 4 years to get your money out, but you're paying royalties to the breeders. I mean, all these roses are bred in Israel in labs to, you know, get the biggest head size and things like that. I didn't even go into that side of the industry. There's a whole before the farm level of industry. It's all they're splicing genes and doing all kinds of stuff to so anyways. You don't want to commit to putting rose. Is orange? You know, the farms tell me all the time. Well, is orange going to be popular in 4 years? I don't know, but just put them in the ground. Let's see. Because today, you know, I say to them, in 6 months they will be, and that's when the first cutting will happen. You know, I'll guarantee the first 2 cuttings off of them. But.
Without having a governing body to kind of oversee everything, how do you introduce a new variety that people haven't seen, or if somebody finds something how does that get into the pipeline then?
Well, fortunately, we've partnered with some good farms that will, before they've even been given a name, when they still have when they're still being tested, because they're being bred in like Israel and the like, and then once they get a variety that they think is potentially feasible, they'll ship samples to Columbia and put them at farm, and they'll just assign them a number. So as they're producing those, we'll start taking those numbers and introducing them to some of our best customers, and they'll fill out forms and give us feedback. And then, so by the time it gets into mass production, we've already created a little bit of demand for it with our core key customers in certain markets, that they want this rose. You know, it's a cream rose with a pink edge and opens, you know, which is so funny. It goes back to the end consumer doesn't have all these demands, but the retail florist has tremendous demands on us. You know, we just say a long stem red. You know, they want. You know, they're telling us we need cream rose with a crimson edge, and it's got to open. It's got to the petals have to reflex back, not unwind. They want them to reflex. You're like, oh, geez. You know, so they get so specific, but. She asked about grocery store business. I do know some of those stats because we are involved in both sides of that. About 10 years ago, 20% of the floral transactions were at mass market level, at grocery stores, supermarkets. The transactions now are 55% of transactions, floral purchases, are now at grocery store mass market. Good or bad, the dollars are still with the retail florist. Only about 40% of dollars are at mass market or at grocery store chain. The 60% of the transactional dollars are, but you know that the traditional retail florist sometimes gets very upset about that. But at that point, I don't know if the person that's picking up a $6.99 bouquet out of a bucket at the local grocery store, if that is that taken away from that, would that same person have gone to a florist and bought a full arrangement? If you talk to some retail florists, they say yes, and they'll want to fight you to it, but you know, it's potentially incremental sales. He asked about selling to, yeah, I know we're running out of time, but one of the things that we've done real recently is, for all of our very largest customers, we stopped buying flowers on their behalf and selling to them, and we just provide the services. It got so difficult dealing with, and I hate to say a large grocery store chain in Chicagoland that maybe has 400 or 500 locations. It got very difficult, so we finally said, you know what, cut us out of this. Go straight to these farms, we'll introduce you to everybody, and we'll take possession of your product that you buy at the farm, and we'll bring it through. We'll even bring it into our facility, and we call it wet packing it. We take out all those dry boxes, we'll cut off an inch or two out of the bottom, put it in a bucket, and then we'll deliver it to your central warehouse. And we'll do that for a fee. But then you can handle all this because, you know, and best thing we could have ever done. Because now we're out of that element, and all we're doing is providing the services and the like. So, your statement of dealing with them can be difficult, yes, but not if you're only providing services. Yep.
Well, we just wanted to thank you for coming out. We appreciate you, and
Thank you very much.
that's from all
Excellent.
of us.
Thank you.